That's how we own it.
What's up, family? It's your girl, Tamika D, Mallory.
And it's your boy, Mysonne, the general.
And we are your host of Street Politicians, the place where the streets and politics meet. Mysonne Lennon. Yo, let me tell you something. America is gone. You know how they used to say, that boy gone.
That boy gone. He ain't got it all.
It's gone. From street to street, from sea to shining sea. It's really a problem.
Yeah, we're going to talk about America being crazy because there's a lot going on in America. But today, you know, as I drive my kids to school every morning like I normally do, I turn on the radio. And I hear this conversation between Ebony K. Williams, who is somebody we both know and respect and love, and DJ Envy, who's also our brother. And I mean, and just the Breakfast Club in general. And I had seen some online chatter about a conversation that her and Ayanna Van Zandt had, and she spoke about not being willing to date a bus driver unless he owned the bus company. So, you know, I didn't even, at first to me, because everybody's personal preference is their preference. You know, if you don't want to date somebody, if you feel like you're an educated individual and you know, you going to college, this and that, and you want to date people within that realm, that should be your prerogative. You know, so I never really understood what everybody was mad at. So then I heard that she doubled down on the conversation. I didn't hear none of that either until today. And they were playing clips from both the interviews and then listening to her today. And I was taken back by, I think in this situation, she was tone deaf, you know, and once again, you have your own personal preference. If you want to date anybody, that's who you like to date, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what the problem was when she started to refer to bus drivers as average, when she started to take the bus driver's job, and then she started talking about having C's and D's in school and average and wanting more. And I think the context of that is wrong, because I know bus drivers that never had C's and D's, right? I know bus drivers who've been A students and just weren't able to come out of school and get different jobs. I know bus drivers who never even went to school. And I know people who are in certain positions where they seem to have a lot of money that have C's and D's, you know, that are very successful. There are a lot of people I know that didn't even go to school that are millionaires. So I think what she was trying to say something, and I think maybe it came off wrong, you know, but the reality of the situation is, and then she brought into white supremacy. And she said white supremacy leaves our people in positions to where they only aspire to this and they only have that. And those are true things. But both of those can be true. You can't look down or seemingly look down on a bus driver or the person with C's and D's and then know white supremacy will put you in a position where you have to take these quote unquote average jobs, right? You can't look down and speak about white supremacy and not know that white supremacy will exalt the average a mediocre white man above a scholarly Black person. So we know those things exist. So I think she wasn't listening, and then she was wanting her point to be across that I didn't think that she was able to properly verbally give her point. She was given dictionary and it was semantics, and she was like semantics, and this is the dictionary, you know, definition for average and all that. And I think she didn't understand that she offended people. You know, and when you offend people, you have to take that into accountability. You gotta say, okay, I said something that people offend. And she was so doubled down and she just said, I don't care if God didn't agree with me. I know what I'm saying. And when you take that type of position, it just seems tone deaf. So, you know, I don't want to criticize, but I was giving my perspective, you know, and I'm open to have a conversation or a dialogue with her to get clarity. But it just seems as if we're not careful about how we speak about our people, right? If we're not speaking about them in an upliftment, even if we're trying to teach or we want better for them, but when you start telling, yo, you just a garbage man, you ain't nothing, it doesn't seem, it's not done in love, or it doesn't seem as if it's done in love.
Well, I mean, here's my thing. I understand both perspectives, and I understand another thing. Let me just work my way from the end of your statement to the beginning. The whole idea of being tone deaf or not, not understanding when you offend people, I think that's a tough road for us to travel down, because there have been times when we are saying something that we believe and we do not care who is offended by it and how people feel. So when I say that I believe that cleanliness is close to godliness, and I refuse to allow people to tell me about, I understand that some people have body issues and all of that. I get that. But I am, even the people who folks say, well, they may be depressed and whatnot, I'm still at the place where I'm saying, okay, I get it, but you still need to try to keep yourself physically clean as best as you can. I know people who live on the street that clean themselves up. I had an uncle who lived on the streets, and he used to clean himself up with wipes or whatever he had. So I understand that there are different factors. Get it. But I'm not willing to lower my standard of what cleanliness should be in a realm, of course, because everybody has their own thing. Listen, let me just finish. I'm not willing to lower it. And I am not going to be bullied or shamed into changing my opinion, right? And there are people who are vehemently against what I'm saying, upset about it, and have unfollowed me because they told me that they demanded that I delete my post or stop saying things and apologize, and I refuse to do it. So
okay, I just want to give just one thing, and that is 100% right, if that's how you feel. So what I'm trying to say is, if you say that, you can't also say, but I'm not trying to offend people who aren't clean, right? And then say, I don't care. If you say, I'm not trying to offend people who aren't clean, this is what I'm saying, and I'm saying, no, you're offending people who aren't clean, right? You can't argue both of those things. That's what I'm trying to say. You can have that position, but that has to be your position.
Well, at the end of the day, sometimes whoever we offend, and we have to just accept the fact that that happens. But I'm not necessarily targeting any one person. I'm just saying that this is an overall thing that I believe that is my standard, and that if I have a family member or a friend who tells me I'm depressed and I'm not really taking care of myself properly, I'm going to do everything I can not to shame them, but to encourage them to do better, right? And whatever, if it's medical, if it's whatever. So I'm just saying, I hear what you're saying. I guess it's semantics to the point that I guess Ebony was trying to make, which I didn't hear any of this except.
And then also you can't follow that up and say, well, I understand that white supremacy has our people on the streets, and white supremacy has them in this situation, and mental health, and say all of the causes.
But I could argue, even with that point, that if my son or your son or anybody else's child comes to me and says, well, the Black man has it hard, and the Black man's been through so much, and white supremacy, this and that and the third, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, okay, well, I get it, and therefore you can go and be average, mediocre, shoot guns, kill people, scam, lie, cheat, go to so I'm still going to hold you to a certain standard.
But you're not going to come to him with those things. That's what I'm saying. If he comes to you with it, it's a different conversation.
No, but I'm sure.
You're not going to give him the excuses for why he should be mediocre, or understand the reasons why these things ain't happening, and then say it's his fault.
But I'm sure though, that the bus driver or whomever it is that she's talking about has approached her and tried to, see what's up or whatever. And she probably turned down certain individuals like that. Now, I thought what was hilarious was a video that Iyanla Vanzant did, and she didn't get to finish the video. Maybe she did, but I saw the tagline because she got distracted by some chin hair. So she never finished the video. But it looked like she was about to talk about the situation again. And on the bottom, it said, the question is whether or not the bus driver will date you. And so that brings me to so I'm saying that I see points in all sides, right? Because I too do not want to date anybody that I have to take them and dust them off and create so-and-so. But who am I to assume that a bus driver would be that? There might be a bus driver out here, but I get her concept. I get what she's trying to say. I do think, to your point, that it went in the wrong direction, because the point is that there are a lot of successful women who are constantly having to deal with people that we meet that can't really do much for us, and emotionally or financially. And it is a struggle that we face. But the bigger struggle that I know exists is having the rich man, or the man that not in my life. So let me be clear, because I had and still am very, very dear and close to a very wealthy man that I was with for over 10 years. And he treated me like a queen. It just time, life happens and people go in their separate directions. But I can't sit here and say anything nasty about him. However, I have been approached by many men who have extreme resources, and they're narcissists, they're nasty, they're liars, they're cheaters, they're all types of things. So I wouldn't typecast anybody, because I know bus drivers that are amazing in terms of how they love their wives, their families, how they stand up in their communities. And I do believe that as a woman, a part of what makes us who we are is the ability to help build an empire with your man who might be a bus driver. And so long as he has the ambition, he don't got to own the bus company at the time, but it certainly should be a goal of ours. And I should be able to look at this man and say, he has the potential, the drive, the passion, the work, work hard, all those things, the work ethic. And me, with my skills and my belief in him and all the things that I have together, we can own the bus company. That's the way that I see it. So just to be clear, I wouldn't say that the only way I would date a bus driver is if he owns the bus company. But I do understand the challenge that many successful Black women are facing, where it is very difficult for us to find people who are compatible with us. So all I was saying is that there's no one clear-cut answer, except that, yes, if the bus driver approached me and I saw in him the passion and all the things that I am looking for in a man, 100%, because I know that I, as a Black woman who is strong and skillful and has resources, I know that the partner that I find that has the wherewithal and the passion and the everything, the work ethic to build with me, we can own not just one bus company, but we can own the bus company, the private car service, the this, the that, and all types of things if we can build. So I feel differently about that, but I know it's a challenge to find compatible men, not just Black, not just whatever, compatible men who also are of sound character for us to date. That's all I'm saying.
I get it.
So,
you got to listen to the interview, and then you'll have a better understanding of just my position of what it is. Because I agree.
Disagree with your position.
No, I'm not saying you disagree or not. I'm just saying
so you
just
said
to have context.
A better understanding. And I'm saying that whether I have a listen to the video or not, I hear what you're saying, but I do think that there are moments when you say something and you mean it and you don't care what happens.
And that's fine. And that's what I'm saying. I think that should have been more of her position in this situation. I think that she brought into so many different factors, and she brought in a conversation that was really an individual choice, right? And she brought in there, and she brought different factors that didn't coincide with what her original point was. And I think that's what it was for me. Wow. So if your preference is you don't want to date a bus driver and you want to date this type of individual, that's fine. And nobody can take you from that. And nobody can make you date who you don't want to date.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Well, some people don't feel it's fine. But anyway, I have not had a chance to sit and listen to the interviews because I have been spending a great deal of time really trying to understand the full situation with Jordan Neely. And I don't mean the full situation as in he was choked by a white man and held down by two other individuals on the train. That's understanding all of that is one part, but understanding more about who he is, and moreover, trying to understand why at this point, which by the way, for those who are listening and those who are watching, we are taping our shows, taping Street Politicians, excuse me, we are taping Street Politicians days before you all will see it. I talk about this all the time, but repetition is important. So we film, when our guests are available and our schedules and what have you. And therefore, as we are sitting down today, there's still not been an indictment of the man who is seen in the video that is now viral, choking Jordan Neely to death, nor the other two individuals, one who was a person of color and another white man who held him down while he was being killed. And so at this point, we're speaking from that perspective. And so we don't know the name of this former Marine, which is interesting because if people now know that he's a former Marine, and I see it in actual articles, news articles, it says that he's a former Marine. That means they have to know who he is. Because you can't say somebody is a former Marine if you don't know who they are. You got to know. And for whatever reason, the media has refused to put out his name as of today. Why? Why do they not have a problem putting out our names all the time? And telling you everything about our background down to when we was 2 years old and spit on the sidewalk.
That's a fact. The situation was crazy. Like you said, I really just wanted to understand. And like I was saying to you earlier, the broader conversation for me is what are we as just civilians, just people from the community, what are we just allowing to happen in our communities, right? The fact that a man was just sitting there for 15 minutes, just choking another man. I don't know what the situation.
It was 15 minutes. Some people are saying it was 5.
Okay, well, even if you just choking somebody for 5 minutes, like at some point when you see, like, it's a lot of homelessness in the train, and it's a lot of mental health on the train. And I don't know if he needed to be subdued. I don't know if he did something that, people felt threatened. And I'm not saying that the immediate holding of him, putting him, but when you start choking somebody, and as an ex-Marine, you know that you could take their life. You have a skill set and an understanding about these particular holds that you could take somebody's life, right? And then people looking on, and the people who were there with him, I just don't know how somebody that said, okay, just get off his neck, we got him. Just hold him. Let's hold him here. Don't choke him. We're not trying to kill. Like, I don't understand why there's no more of a value for life. There's a less value for life. There's a less value for hurting and harming people. People are getting numb to hurting and harming people. They become accustomed to this level of aggression and violence. And it's just like, I want to know, how did we get so far from consciousness? That's the question for me. It's just like, people hold cameras, they can sit there and see somebody damn near choking to death, and you just holding the camera. You ain't saying, yeah, hey, get off his neck.
He choked on.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, with the process of him getting to choke to death, there was a process that got there. You understand what I'm saying?
So I agree with you that the videotaping is triggering for me, right? Sometimes. But I do have a different perspective on this. Because the person who was videoing, who had a very steady hand, is a journalist, right? Who reports the news. And he or she, I think it's a he, have the only account of what took place, right? And sometimes when you are actually in the incident, when you are a party to the incident happening, your statement of what took place is one scrutinized and potentially debunked and what have you. And also, you don't know all everything that's going on, can't see everything, and don't necessarily have all of the facts straight either, right? So I appreciate the fact that this man or this person, this journalist, was able to get a clear-cut video and also has made a very clear, at this point, unchallenged statement about what took place, which is he said that Jordan Neely got on the train and said, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired, and I don't care if I go to jail, with some expletives in the middle of all of that, right? And then he took his jacket and threw it to the ground. And he says that the white man walked up behind his back and grabbed him, took him down to the ground. And then we see what happened on the video thereafter.
That's crazy.
So this is what he said, right? So I agree with you about the video thing. I'm just trying to make sure that we put into proper context why it's also important that we have a very neutral, uninvolved person who is just filming and just reporting on what took place to prove what I believe already. Because, and listen, my text messages from people sending me screenshots of other people's text messages, because everybody knows not to text me and try to make excuses for what happened to Jordan Neely. But people are having conversations. The amount of people who are devastated, stressed out, scared to death, and everything else of the train because of the crazy stuff that's going on. People getting spit in the face, houseless or unhoused individuals, or people in general, because you don't know if they unhoused or not, exposing themselves, hitting people, throwing people in front of the train on the train tracks, stabbing people. All of these things are real. They're real concerns and they're real problems. And I see people in my comments who are like, you don't know anything about the train unless you live in New York and ride. I've been riding the train my whole entire life.
This is a fact.
I don't ride the train today, partially not even because of myself, but because y'all had pretty much banned me from going on the train since, you know, at this point, people know me. And if I'm by myself, if I'm with 2 or 3 people and we need to get from one stop to the next in Manhattan, there's no way I'm gonna be like, oh, we're gonna get in a Uber and either pay the money or deal with the traffic. We getting on the train. But by myself, I rode the train, and you know that up until maybe about a year or so ago, well, around COVID, I was riding the train up and down, taking the Metro North to then I would get on, and by the way, people on the Metro North be bugging too, but taking the Metro North and then getting on the regular train to cross over the shuttles, walking through 42nd Street, walking through a lot of different places, and taking the number 5 in the 2 train uptown or whatever. I did that. So you can't tell me. I know the trains are crazy. What I'm saying is that you don't get to kill somebody because we know how the trains are. Well, we know how the trains are, in quotes. We know how the trains are. So therefore, you get to kill a person because he was saying things you didn't like and screaming in a way that you felt uncomfortable. If that's the case, fuck it. People could just do whatever. I've been making a case all day. If that's the case, then we should not lock Pookie up for shooting John, because John is dangerous. He done been to jail. He done made me afraid. The community is violence everywhere. Everybody is scared. And he said some shit maybe to me, about me, or he just came outside and was like, I'm gonna fuck everybody up. Wait till you see me. And then why can't I shoot him?
No, you're right. I will say that in these times, if a person got on the train and said all of that and looked kind of deranged, right? I would have been aware, right? And I wouldn't have been opposed to somebody holding him, restraining him to make sure he didn't have a gun, that he planned on open fire on the train. I wouldn't have been opposed to that, right? I would definitely not have been opposed, because if you get on the train, and we've seen people shooting up the trains and all that. So if you get on there and you screaming and you saying you don't give a fuck about going to jail, I got to make sure you don't got a gun.
Okay,
but I don't need to choke. What I'm trying to say is,
I hear you.
I don't need to choke you and hurt you to make sure you, like, once I grab you and I'm like, yo, somebody make sure he don't got gun in his pockets, because maybe that's what but choking a man to death who has done no physical harm to anybody, who has just said words, just because you harmed that man, you assaulted that man. You understand what I'm saying? And then you took his life, and so you killed that man.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, so that we're clear, that maybe you did feel threatened, because I understand that the train is threatening. I get it. All I'm saying is that the fact that that man is dead and I don't have any example of physical, brutal violence, bloodshed,
That's a
almost
fact.
bloodshed, I can't accept it.
We
But
saying the same thing.
since we're talking about mental health, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're focused on mental health for the rest of the month, and obviously mental health is at the center of this discussion, but so many others. Shooting in Atlanta, I mean, just too many things happening. We are having a guest come on, and I think we should take the rest of our time to bring our guest on because we run our mouths too much and we never get to do some of the stuff we're supposed to do on the show. So let's introduce the guest into the conversation. So we have been joined by a guest today that is really, really someone important to me in my life because he is helping me to keep my mind in order with all of the just wow things that's happening in our society. You know that I have been doing trauma work, unfortunately, for a long, long, long time. And you've joined me on this journey, and it is mentally taxing, not to mention all the personal stuff that we have to deal with in our lives. And so my doctor is joining us today, and that's Dr. Michael Pratts. So let me just tell you about how much of a boss he is, because beyond just being, you know, which I think is pretty important, just being my doctor, but he has some other very, very impressive things that he has done. He's a psychiatrist by trade and has also had deep study in neurology. So psychiatrist and a neurologist, which, you know, folks don't understand that it's important to understand the brain and how things operate and what triggers people in order to be a good psychiatrist and doctor dealing with mental health issues. And then he's worked with the New York State Commission of Correction. And so we know how serious it is that we have people in the system in New York who are Black men working with and you know, trying to help make some changes within the system. He's worked at St. John's Hospital, has been in the psych emergency room departments, and has a host of clients, including young children. So I want folks to know that we didn't just go find Tamika's doctor, who's just a regular guy that, you know, does some things. No, this man is celebrated, decorated, and has a very long history in dealing with the mental health of so many people, and especially us as African Americans. So I'm proud today to introduce to some people, Mysonne and I know you well, Dr. Michael Pratts.
Thank you so much.
Peace, King. How you feeling today, man?
Feeling enthusiastic.
So yeah, that's good. I want to feel like that. It's been so much going on. You know, I want to ask you a question. Being that it's Mental Health Awareness Month, you know, and we just had this situation that happened on the train station with the brother, what's his name, Michael Neely?
Jordan Neely. Jordan.
We just had this situation on the train that just happened with Jordan Neely. And the train station seems like it is overloaded with mental health issues, you know, and people who have mental health issues. It's like so many people on the train. That's one of the major things that we talk about and we hear about on the trains. What is your take on it?
Can we also just say, because I want to make sure that people do not believe or do not walk away with the narrative that just the people that you see sleeping on the train, yelling out, people who are unhoused, that they are the only ones that are having mental health issues on the train. You can see people who are professionally dressed and look like they got it going on, who are also dealing with mental health challenges.
Sure. Yeah, mental health challenges is a very broad category, and it's a spectrum. It goes from, you know, highly functioning people who may just have a little bit of anxiety, down to people with significant, what we call serious and persistent mental illness. Number one, The majority of people with mental illness are not aggressive. They actually are disproportionately victimized. So it's
Mm,
really important that we maintain compassion. These are individuals who have impaired thinking. Their thought process, their ability to solve problems is impaired. And so what you'll find is more basic instincts like wanting to be warm versus being cold, wanting to feel dry versus being wet. And so a place like a subway is a dormitory in a sense. It's a shelter as compared to being on the street. So, but what we could do is use these places that naturally attract folks who are having difficulty making decisions, and we can put people in those places to act as monitors, act as folks who could potentially provide a service. And so we should, number one, think about bringing the service to the people because services already exist in New York. And so there is no shortage of doctors. Now, there may be a wait or an appointment, but anyone who sort of really wants mental health and has the ability to pay for it can get it. So now we're talking about people who either don't have the ability to pay for it or don't have access to it, where we need to be looking to lower the burden of access to care, moving care to places where people are, to homeless shelters, to bus terminals, subway stations, etc.
mm,
So you're saying that you support having actual practitioners, if you will, in the train station, maybe riding the trains to work with and talk to individuals. And now the next question is going to be, I'm sure, because we've got a certain type of audience. Some of them are semi or want to be bougie or very bougie or on the spectrum. They will say that what happens to that mental health professional if a problem breaks out? How do they deal with their own safety?
Sure. The way we have dealt with safety issues involving mental health employees, folks who deliver care, is with law enforcement. That's not necessarily the best tool, but that is what is existing today. If you go into a psychiatric emergency room and you're unable to contain yourself, security will physically help you out of that situation. And so it does, unfortunately, sometimes folks will need, hands-on, but I would feel more comfortable if that the entire interaction was based on a mental health call rather than a criminal call. I think the police officers may have a slightly different attitude toward training, toward responding toward emotional crisis, which is different than law enforcement, where you want to force a person to comply. Many times people having a mental health crisis aren't thinking clearly and they don't even understand the demands that you're putting on them. They either don't understand it or in some way they're paranoid or having some other kind of interpretation of what you're saying. And so in their mind, they may be responding appropriately. And if your goal as a police officer is to simply enforce the commands that you're giving, you're going to have a lot of conflict and hurt people. So I'm advocating for bringing services to places where you find people who need those services. That's what I'm advocating for. The specifics of that will need to be flushed out.
So when we look at, this situation in general, right? And we see, from the reports that we were getting, what happened to the man, they say that he came onto the train and he was very irate. He said he was hungry. He said he was tired and he didn't care if he went to jail. And how would you tell just the average citizen, because a lot of average citizens are just scared, when you see someone in that mental capacity, like we're not trained. So sometimes we might need to hear from people like yourself that would know what to do in that situation. What would you advise in situations like that?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. One is it is unfortunate that people are so scared, but part of that is our fault when we let the most needy, the most mentally unstable people go without services and go untreated in our community, and they act out as they're trying to put two and two together, it does impact the citizens of that neighborhood, and then they do react in a way that is more scared. But that is largely on our failure to address the undercare of these people. So let's get that point out there first. So people are now reacting to the fact that they know there are untreated mental health individuals wandering around without access to care. That should make all of us a little hesitant. So what you want to do is always be a safe distance from someone. And what I would like is for our citizens to have access to be able to have a number to call. Maybe, we say, see something, say something. Maybe we make a big push to help our folks who seem to be in need. If you see someone who seems to be having an emotional meltdown, you can call this number or you can do that. And people who are competent in that area can respond or could respond.
Would you approach a person like that, just you being, I know you, so you'll go up to young kids in a park that could be fighting, it looks like it's going to get violent, and you may go up to them and try to help to de-escalate. But in that situation, or in situations like that, would you feel comfortable approaching them, or would you try to just keep everybody else around calm to let that, to maybe get off the train at the next stop? Like, how would you handle it?
Yeah, I think, those kind of common sense solutions are what I would advocate for. But I guess the starting position that here's another human being who is in distress, and there's nothing wrong with asking, hey, is there something I can do? Are you okay? There's nothing wrong with having a conversation from a safe distance, which is about how the distance for you to get hit. You want to sort of stay out of that striking range. So I don't find there's anything wrong with if it seems appropriate to see if a person needs help. I don't see anything wrong with if that person responds to you in a positive way. You got to be careful. Sometimes I talk to folks as a professional and they start to escalate, and then I know to back away, which is sort of opposite of what sort of law enforcement and other people are trained. When you resist, they sort of push up the force. Whereas when folks with mental health issues push back, we really back away and give them room. Yeah, I would encourage people around to calm down, maybe give this man some room, see if he would get off at the next stop. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying something kind or, hey, are you okay?
Oh, no. So I was about to ask two questions. There was a procedure, a process that you was discussing with us before we started. And I want you to go into that because I think that was pretty much brilliant. And maybe this is kind of along the same lines, but I think since we see, like you said, that the train station is sort of like a dormitory for people who are experiencing mental health, it would be common sense to me that we have mental health workers within the MTA at stops. We got so many cops, right? The thing is this, America has said that we can just put cops everywhere and it's gonna stop everything. So if we got 3 cops, why not have 1 cop or maybe 2 cops and a mental health worker at every station that they can talk to? Because people are experiencing mental health more than than the violence and the crime. Most of those things are as a result, in my mind, or what I believe, as a result of people dealing with mental health issues. So do you think that would be, a good solution?
I think that would be an excellent solution in a more ideal setting. And I don't want to be jaded, but the reality is the budgets, from my understanding, don't have a lot of extra room to hire a bunch of new folks. Would that be better? It would be better. But there are some solutions and ideas that are currently in place if we approached and looked at the laws maybe a little bit differently. So I'll tell you, New York is different than most states in that we have designated psychiatric emergency room called CPEP. or comprehensive psychiatric, right, emergency programs. These are places, they're dedicated, freestanding. There's one at Bellevue, Kings County, and in the Bronx, multiple places throughout the city, all through upstate New York. They're based upon the population to serve a certain number of people. These facilities have the ability to evaluate people 24/7 and keep people in the hospital and give them the care that they need. The problem is, how do you get someone there? And the way that the law is set now, and this already exists, if a family member, or I can even do this for one of my patients, I could write what's called a pickup order saying that I empower whatever law enforcement officer comes across this person that I put on the paper to take that person to the nearest psychiatric emergency room, right? And that pickup order already empowers any law enforcement agency to not only pick the person up, but take them to get care. The problem is that it's a reactionary law. It has to be implemented. And so I've been trying to push for the idea to see if we couldn't get our mayor to see if in a legal way we can't empower our law enforcement agents already, given the fact that this is a crisis. And therefore identifying someone who's clearly in an emotional decompensated state can be then taken to a psychiatric emergency room. The excuse has been they're not committing a crime, I can't arrest them. You don't just arrest people, you also, when engaged, can act as a transporter to a mental health facility. This already exists, and it should be enacted in a proactive way. And what you would see is, and again, officers would need more training, more folks would need more training, but as you see typical symptoms of someone who's in distress, that police officer would be able to take that person into care immediately.
It's so, I'm listening to everything you're saying and I hear it and it's right? It sounds right. Like we've got to be able to transport people, which I guess was the initial concept that Mayor Adams in New York was talking about, having people removed from, wherever, out sleeping outside of businesses, on the train, and taken to a facility so that they can get help. Sometimes the way in which Mayor Adams speaks, his tone, people don't like it. And even I have felt uncomfortable with the way in which things are said and how you lead, right? Because people want to hear compassion, especially when you're talking about very, very, very vulnerable, a very, very vulnerable part of the population, which sometimes it could be Black men that we're talking about in general that are not unhoused, or, Black children or whatever. We want you to lead with so much compassion first, and then get to the part about what are the steps. So I hear you. What I'm challenged with is how the systems in America and in New York and across this country have failed Black and brown people so much. And because we are the ones who have the most visible signs of all the things, and that's everything, every statistic, every health concern, every challenge, we have the most visible because we have the most poverty. And therefore, most of us are the ones on the train, having the mental health issues, needing housing and what have you. It is very scary for people to even consider supporting a plan for the same officers who, even when folks are not having mental health to have to engage them. It's like, how do we ever move the cart?
Sure. So, let's just be really clear. We, as Black folks, have survived this genocide attempt, for throughout history, and we have suffered the consequences of, systemic racism. And so you do see a disproportionate amount of men separated from their families and in poverty, secondary to hundreds of years of just racism and discrimination. When you combine that with the fact that due to racism and discrimination, symptoms that are presented to individuals who don't usually work with Black folks are largely misinterpreted. And you see higher rates of inaccurate diagnosis, incorrect medications. They tend to overprescribe for Black boys. Any child that's in any system, whether it's child protective, foster care, any or whatever, is 4 times more likely to be on a psychotropic medication unnecessarily. I spend a lot of my time taking kids off of medication. And so that's the consequence of race. The current crisis that we have requires us to do something. And what I am proposing is, yes, our police officers have many, many, many challenges, and it is yet another burden. But what I'm saying, Tamika, is this system is already in place, and we can turn this on today. This would serve to bring people. What I'm advocating for is, if you see someone in distress, and again, these officers would need to be trained on this, and it seems reasonable, you would bring them to the CPEP, and then the officer is gone. Now the patient is in my care. Now I can go in and do a psychiatric evaluation. And if you don't need to be in a psychiatric facility, I'm not going to keep you there. But that should be that's where the mental health people are. And so, or maybe we say, hey, it looks like your primary issue actually is medical. A lot of times sometimes there's underlying medical conditions that you're unaware of. When somebody has on 10 coats and 10 pair of pants, you don't know what their skin looks like. You don't know what that diabetic foot looks like, and they're confused and disoriented, right? So people who are acting in an unsafe way need to be evaluated. And right now, we have a system in place that could function to bring those folks in, then be handed off to mental health professionals from CPEP. And again, my CPEP directors are probably going to be upset with me, but it would be more funding into the CPEP to be able to respond to these. But from there, then we could send you to a shelter. We could send you to a rehab. We could get you on, if you need replacement for heroin addiction. All of that comes from CPEP, and it already exists. We already send people there today.
And I guess, Mysonne, I know you wanted to jump in, but I guess what I'm saying, which we are all saying, is that the transport issue is problematic, just how it gets you. So perhaps what we're saying is that there has to be a CPEP model that is brought to the people. I mean, you said that. You started out by saying we've got to go to where the problem is and work with the communities. And that is the same sort of model and mentality that we work under as organizers, that we've got to go to where the people are and not assume that because we posted a thing on social media that folks are going to show up, not assume that because we set up a food pantry at a church or in a building that people are going to come there to get the services.
Some people will.
Some people will.
We talk about the rest that don't.
Right.
The ones
that
take
it to the corner that they walk past frequently, maybe even knock on doors to provide those things. And that would require us to take mental health very, very seriously.
Correct.
It would require us to shift funding maybe from some places and look at the ways in which we fund programs now, because when we say that there may or may not be any money, well, as long we're militarizing police every day, we're buying equipment that is so expensive that's and waits for a potential crisis versus using those dollars to deal with housing and health and whatever. That's my little rant in my soapbox. But I do have one question because I want to shift because I know it's time for you and us to go. Young people, first of all, we saw just here in the last few days, again, mass shootings are happening just often, too often. And there's a young man who he shot and killed one person, shot several people with, I guess, six people in Atlanta, all women between the ages of 20 and 70. On the younger side of that number, a person died, a woman died. His mother said he's been a mess since his medicine got messed up. There are people listening. I have friends, and it's no secret that the reason why you became my doctor is because I suffered an addiction issue connected to my own mental health challenges, and you've walked me through that. I have had people doing my hair, doing my makeup, Dr. Pratts, people helping me, at events. Maybe they're the photographer. Since they've heard my story, since I've been telling the story, they whisper. They don't say it in public. Right. Celebrities send me messages and they say, hey, what do I do? My family member, or I'm asking for a friend. Right. How did you get off of, whatever you were addicted to? I don't always have an answer. Right. I don't. And I would, love for you to talk to those families today during Mental Health Awareness Month. We were supposed to talk about young people and Black men, and somehow we all over here. But for people who are listening today, Mental Health Awareness Month, what is the message about how you get your self-help and or people around you? And just make sure that as you're talking about this, include a piece about the shame, because most people, that's what is the barrier for them.
Yeah, part of the pressure that's been put on us is, you got to be twice as good. Where particularly Black women are expected to, function at the highest capacity, no matter what they're hired for. And so then what ends up happening is the pressure that's put on us causes us to neglect not just our mental health care, but also our medical care. So, our brothers getting their prostate exams and their blood pressures and things like that. And so I think, first of all, we have to really get out of that mindset that we need to be twice as good, and that being good doesn't include taking care of ourselves. So we need to put self-care first. I hope that what you'll do is post my book on your website. It's called Mind Matters, a resource guide for Black people serving Black communities, And what we do in this book is really talk about mental illness in very plain terms. Anyone can read this book. It goes through all of the diagnosis. And what this would do for you and your family members is give you the words in plain language to be able to express to your doctor, to your therapist, what these concerns are. Frequently, it seems scary. The symptoms, they seem, in some way, like I've heard people say, oh, they're possessed, or there's something spiritual. This is biologically based, and it would help us to become more familiar with mental health. It's something that we have looked at with shame and embarrassment. I get the same thing wherever I go. I give these talks, and when I ask people to raise their hand if they have any issues, no one ever raises their hand. But before I can get the door, they're pulling my coat, slipping me their number, doing all kinds of things because they actually do have this need. So I think that's number one. The second point is that mental health services are available right now. Now, a lot of it is online, and I do realize it's not as good as face-to-face, but I promise you, having a therapist and someone to contact online in a crisis is better than no one. It's better than no one. So I would encourage people to use some of these online online access to mental health services. And third, and this is just my opinion, we really need to do more in the schools. We need to be leaning more toward emotional intelligence. The mental health is the end of it, but we should be picking up kids in the beginning when they're hungry. That's a predictor of mental health. When you see they're wearing tattered clothes, that's a predictor of mental health. When they're failing their grades, before you put them in special ed, I'm trying to get these kids out of special ed. How about we start doing mental health evaluations in there?
You said when their clothes look like ripped and run down or whatever, that's an indicator. That's a
future mental health challenge. And I'll tell you what, yes, let me speak on that. This is the weakest link. When people, I'll put it to you like this. If you took 100 families in distress for whatever reason, and you gave them all $5,000, not even know what the problem is, I guarantee you a lot of their situation would improve. The arguments, the fighting would go away. That night at dinner, you laid that $5,000 on the table, the husband and wife aren't fighting anymore that night. So people under pressure bubble over. And so when a kid doesn't have clean clothes or enough to eat, it's an indicator that things are not adequate in the house. That should call our attention to go see, why is that mother not bathing that child? Maybe she has depression and she's laying in the bed. And so that kid who then is suffering more pressure is more likely to try something for relief, to drink something, to smoke something, to try some physical harming to make themselves feel better, to hide in shame. It's that.
That's deep. So what I want to end this pretty much with two things I need you to do. I need you give us your background. You know, you sound like one of the best psychologists I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And knowing you as an individual, you're a dope all-around individual. But let these
I
people
appreciate
understand how long you've been studying.
Fine.
You know, let them know where they can find you, because we need people like you, man. We need people to reach out to people like you.
Well, I'll tell you, I grew up in Chicago and was struggling myself as a young person and ended up going to prison at 18 years old. And I'll tell you that experience has shaped me as a man, and as a formerly incarcerated individual, have tried to navigate through life with this burden of a felony that has, I'm going to estimate, delayed me probably 10 to 12 years, even though I passed all the tests to become a doctor, to go to college. I was constantly denied in my pursuit of access to becoming a mental health provider. Which
how long were you incarcerated? I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I was sentenced to 4 years, and so I did about 2 years.
Wow, I never knew that. We got to do sit downs with the stand ups. I need you on my sit downs with the stand ups, where we sit down and we go from everything about formerly incarcerated and how you become successful. So that's later on, but
okay. So I got out of prison. Believe it or not, I actually wrote. I was writing letters to colleges from prison. I was pretty naive. I got accepted into Berkeley. I got out of prison, I think, in July of 1987, and within a couple of months, I was a freshman at Berkeley and studied molecular and cell biology. I then went to the University of Southern California. I applied to 30 medical schools. I got rejected by 28. Fortunately, the University of Southern California saw fit to admit me, even though I had a felony. So really, what happened was you need people to give you opportunity. So it's so easy, as you know this, to slam the door in your face.
That's
I
right.
then ended up coming to New York. I trained at SUNY downstate for child psychiatry. I trained at Montefiore at the Bronx Psychiatric Center for adult psychiatry. So I've always really worked with marginalized people, homeless outreach in the city. I was there 9/11, volunteered under 9/11. So yeah, I felt like, God has really put a responsibility on me. So I give my time to formerly incarcerated people, to the Black community, to underserved populations, to advocate on their behalf, because they don't have anybody else to advocate for them.
Well, listen, I truly appreciate you, man. That I didn't even know that part, but I just knew that you was a dope individual, and I liked you individual. But now hearing that, I get it. You know what I'm saying? And it makes me feel a lot better, because you're a representation of what formerly incarcerated people can do. Because there's such a stigmas, and that we are just the worst, the bottom of the barrel. I heard somebody call somebody the bottom of the barrel from being incarcerated. So you represent what someone who has the mind and the heart and the energy that comes home after being incarcerated and suffering to come home and do something successful. So I appreciate you.
Let me give a shout. I got to give a shout out to our Governor Kathy Hochul, who, despite me having a felony, appointed me to the New York State Commission on Corrections, and now I sit in an oversight position, ensuring that there's no shenanigans happening with our incarcerated individuals as far as psychiatric delivery. I'm also want to give a shout out to New York State Senate, who confirmed me, knowing that I was a formerly incarcerated individual. So New York State is not just talking about formerly incarcerated individuals, but actually doing something. And that's an example right there.
Well, listen, man, that's what I'm talking about. It's my boy, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Sometimes I love New York. Sometimes I don't.
It's a love-hate.
What is that? Milky Way. What is it? Mounds don't. Okay, one of those things. That's how I feel about it. I'm emotional because I know all of this stuff, but I didn't know what you would bring up today about your background. Sometimes you do it all the time. Sometimes we don't. And I know your story and I know your commitment. I know your family. Obviously, your wife, Hassani, is one of my best friends and has mentored me, in the political space in New York and beyond. And I am just so proud to be friends with you all because I know what you do. I know the commitment you have. I know that when I'm talking to you, I'm speaking to you, not to everybody. My business is not being told to the world because that was one of the reasons why I had challenges with working with mental health professionals in the past because I was worried about what they would tell other people. And it just has been a pleasure. And if you are someone who's listening and trying to get in touch with Michael Pratts, first of all, the information will be included in this episode, but please tell folks how to find you. And thank you for joining Street Politicians.
Sure, absolutely. You can just Google my name, Michael Pratts. I'm listed there, one of the Black psychiatrists of Greater New York. My contact information is there. Tamika, hopefully you'll publish the book on your website. The link to that.
Mind Matters.
Mind Matters, a resource guide, right, for the Black community. Plain language. Everyone should read.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, King. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that was excellent. And I didn't even know all of those things about Mike. Say, you be holding out. Like, I knew you was a dope.
Sometimes, we've had people on the show before, guests, that they didn't tell me to bring up that they were formerly incarcerated. Like sometimes people don't want to talk about it. Sometimes not because they're ashamed, but because if you're talking about their professional work, they don't want you to be distracted.
Overshadowed.
But
I'm glad that he wears it as a badge of honor. And that's what Sit Downs with the Stand-Ups is about. It's about highlighting brothers like Michael. Like this is a successful psychiatrist, someone who is really successful. And he broke down his accolades. He sits on the board for formerly incarcerated individuals that he was appointed
for the commission
for the incarcerated
people inside.
Okay, so listen, for the people for the Department of Corrections. So that is important. It is important that people who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated coming home see somebody like him and say, "Wow, it's not over for me. Whatever society is saying about me is not over." And I'm glad that he embraces that. So. The interview in itself was dope, but that just made it 10 times doper for me. So definitely gonna have him on Sit Downs with the Stand-Ups. But on off topic, I don't get this a little off topic. I was in sports mode. We're in the playoffs, so I just been watching sports, and I was watching ESPN. And a couple days ago, Dylan Brooks. Dylan Brooks is a player on Memphis. He likes to trash talk. He gets in the heads. He's one of those players that we've been celebrating. People like Draymond Green, people like Dennis Rodman, like people like Gary Payton. These were people that throughout history, they would trash talk you, they foul you hard, and that's who they were. And they've been like the garbage men, and they've always existed in basketball. And in a couple of days, the Memphis Grizzlies, who is his team, put out a statement saying that they wouldn't be inviting him back to play for the team. Mm-hmm. And I think it was biased. I think never before I've seen anything like this. I think because, LeBron James is pretty much hierarchy and he's like basketball royalty. And he talked trash to LeBron, and LeBron cracked him. So they ended up losing the series. But throughout this whole season, he talked trash. And they were winning. They were a number 1 seed, a number 2 seed in the West. And him talking trash and the level that he played hard every game got them to where they was. And now that, they didn't win and it was publicized, what they're doing to this man is something I don't get. I don't think it's right to publicly embarrass him, try to make him the black sheep. He's done nothing that we have not seen throughout history. There's been people that I hated that talk trash, that fouled the best players, my favorite players, but they serve the job, and I don't see he ain't no off the court distraction. You don't hear Dylan Brooks done got into no fight out in the street. He ain't out there beating nobody up. He ain't doing no gangster stuff. We've been celebrated negativity in people's characters and in real life, you know, because they could play basketball, they're good at the sport. But somebody who comes to the sport with a little bit of edge, who, from what we can see, is a decent human being, you want to shun and embarrass him, you know, for having a role that has been celebrated in the NBA for years. So I don't really get what it is, you know, and I'm not the biggest Dylan Brooks fan. I actually don't really like him much, but I think what the NBA and what the Memphis Grizzlies is doing to him is wrong, and I don't really get it. I don't, you know, and I don't know why more athletes and players aren't saying what he's saying, what's happening to him is wrong. So I just wanted to say that I really just don't get it.
Well, the whole idea of more people speaking up on behalf of folks is it's really the number of people who are willing to speak out is dwindling because the punishment for using your voice has been scaring people. And you can see that, you know, so many have been put in their place. They've been demonized, they've lost money, and they've lost endorsement deals. And therefore, and I'm not just talking about in sports, just in general, paychecks. Let me not say endorsements, paychecks. And so people have become, you know, they're worried about themselves. And so I think that's one thing. I don't really know obviously much about this situation, but what I will say is that it seems like, I mean, we're just in a sensitive space as a society. And, you know, like I always tell you, we are all, each individual person is a walking contradiction, because what we don't agree with on one hand, because of our own personal opinions on certain issues, we may support on the other hand. So we are not going to allow or certain things, but then the walking contradiction is that on the other side, we're like, no, but this shouldn't be an issue. And I say that because the sensitivity around trash talk that seems to be a new thing within sports, it's triggering to a lot of people. Like, people are on both sides, you know, people are like, wait, I don't think we should be censoring, or not so much censoring, but changing the flow of the trash talk and the, you know, the sort of trolling or whatever you call it, taunting or whatever. People don't want that. But then when it's not their favorite, when it's their favorite team, they're okay with it, right? When it's their favorite player, they're okay with it. So I don't know where this is going to go. We have to kind of see the direction that this takes on.
I think social media has put a highlight on everything, and is allowed people who really don't have any stake or anything to dictate the whole structure of everything. So if you go online and they see 1,000, 2,000 people say, "Hey, F Dylan Brooks," then in their mind, you know, he's a liability to the team, you know. So I think, and that's why I try to tell people, you can't judge real life on the internet, because it really, I'm trying to tell you, it is a false meter. It is really a false meter. And we've seen that in a lot of situations with court cases and what people were saying and the public opinion that was going on. And then in real life, we were like, well, the internet was trying to tell us this. And then when real life happened, it'd be completely different. So I just want us not to get so caught up in what the internet believes, what the internet tells us, and just start dealing in real life. Do your own research, fact check things, look, you know, understand the reality of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, well, guess what? You got some nerve, because the people who say the internet ain't real life, sure enough, spend a lot of time on it trying to convince people of their opinions. But anyway, I digress.
I mean, it's not so much trying to convince. It's just that what I do understand about the internet.
If you make a point on the internet and you tell 2 or 3 people how you feel, that's cool. If you spend hours in a day going back and forth in comments with different individuals on different pages, it's left your page, now it's on this page, and it's here, and the third, and this, and the third, you are trying to convince people of your opinion.
I don't really notice that. I naturally like to debate.
Yeah, but why debate
when
people
I'm debating,
who are not, but why debate people who are not real life?
Because for me, I don't think that the individuals, I don't really think the individuals are real. I just think that their perspectives are something that might be shared with a lot of people. So when they have a perspective, I have no problem shooting down the perspective because I can answer it. But that's just me.
We have a difference of opinion in this.
We do.
I don't agree.
Okay, we don't agree. Sounds familiar. So listen, man, shout out to Dr. Michael Pratts for his excellent, understanding of where we are in society today during Mental Health Month. Hopefully somebody will listen to this hint and take some of his recommendations for how we deal with mental health in our society right now.
But the policing thing, I don't know. Like,
I mean,
there has to be some adjustments made. But I understand from his perspective.
The principle is that those people need help. The people need help, and we need to be able to get them immediate help. And if we allow them to just roam, without help, and when we have the ability and people, officers will walk up to you and stop and frisk you anyway, right? So if we got stop and frisk, and people are getting stopped and frisked every day, and we able to utilize officers to get mental health people the help they need by walking up to them and saying, hey, we have to take you to a mental health facility, and it's documented,
I don't know. We're gonna have to talk about
we have to talk
a whole nother day about that and we would have to talk to law enforcement in New York, because I don't know how in the white community it might work.
It's like a warrant.
Asian community.
It's like a warrant. That's what it is. It's like if the police pick you for the warrant, you're going to jail.
I understand.
Right? So if you have a mental health warrant to where we don't take you to jail, but we take you to a mental facility that can help you because, it's deemed that you need help mentally.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not trying to argue because I hear what you're saying. I'm just triggered because I know that a lot of people get abused and we never hear and see their stories. A lot of people don't. More people don't get abused by police than do. So I'm not, we know that. That's it. More people don't. More people, the situation is resolved and, what have you. But there are very egregious acts and cases that cannot be ignored because they're not the majority. And so I don't know. I think you have to be a certain type of officer who signs up for this and has, as you were saying about the having a weapon, right? You've got to be constantly monitored for your behavior. You have to have the officer who's standing next to you and other individuals, they have to be responsible for what you do. So if you act out, you and Officer Robbie together need to be held responsible for your actions. Like it has to be so strict that that's going to be the problem, because you're going to have a lot of police officers that's like, I don't want that responsibility. They're scrutinizing me too much. So then who does the job? I just don't know. That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
Well, we'll discuss it further another day. But with that said, brings us to the end of another show. Shout out to all of our listeners. We appreciate you. Street Politicians, #1 podcast in the world. Continue to hit us up. Hit us on Street Politicians Pod. Let us know what you love, what you hate, what you want to hear, what guests you want us to get. We want all of your feedback, man. And once again, I'm not going to always be right. Tamika D. Mallory's not going to always be wrong, but we will both always, and I mean always, always, always be authentic.
Peace.
Listen to Street Politicians on the Black Effect Network on iHeartRadio.
And catch us every single Wednesday for the video version of Street Politicians on iWomen.tv.